I guess since he brought it up, we might as well start with the hip and all of your hip issues that you've been having. So, how's it feeling?
Absolutely miserable. It's not sick at all, but you know what? We're doing our best.
So, you had surgery on it, but before you had surgery, do you kind of want to explain why you even had surgery? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So continuing on, like in my life, I've had so many different injuries, and a lot of them came to crashing. And this time I didn't crash. So I had this thing inside my hip. So where the top of the femur sits inside the socket, there's a thing called a cam lesion. And essentially your hip is supposed to be nice and smooth. The ball is supposed to be nice and smooth, but I have this knuckle right here. So essentially there's a thing called a labrum and it sits on top and it's supposed to be like a bearing or a bushing between the two bones, essentially the hip socket and the actual top of the femur. And so I was doing a frontside 360 out of a rail, and I remember it vividly, feeling great, coaching, everything was awesome, did this trick, boom, landed, stomped it, but felt that my hip ripped something inside. Well, I'm an idiot. I didn't even take a day off snowboarding because I have a job, I got bills to pay. I ended up just dealing with it for the next 6 years. And so then it got to a point where when I ripped it off the bone, it just started like grinding on the inside. I just neglected it for a long time. I didn't have insurance. So being able to afford to pay for all these things was really challenging. And it was not on the priority list because I was like, it hurts, but it's never been significant enough. And then 2021, I was hitting a rail, very mellow rail, and it was probably about this high off the ground, super dumb. And I slipped out and fell because the rail was sticky. And the way my board hit the ground, it had the same impact that it happened before, where I ripped the cartilage or the labrum again. And so now it's ripped 50% off the bone. So it's ripped from the 10 o'clock all the way to 2 o'clock and just ripped off the bone. Again, I didn't take any time off for snowboarding. My legs all busted. I literally fell and I'm like in the fetal position for like an hour, just sitting next to this rail, completely hurt, completely upset, just not stoked, thinking my life's over.
Oh,
I'm an idiot. So I ended up not calling ski patrol because I don't do that. And I
I don't do
snowboarded
that either.
down, and it took me a long time to snowboard down. And then where I park in a cool little parking spot. So I'm about 50 feet from my car. And it probably took me 40 minutes to walk to my car because I'm just like in so much pain, absolutely miserable. And then it's so funny because last time we talked about the same exact thing. I was
With your back.
hungry. Well, yeah, with my back, I got hungry.
Yep.
So then I went and got food, and it took me forever to go get food and blah, blah. And I was just like in a lot of pain. Well, then the next day, I have a job to do. I coach full time. I have athletes that depend on me. So I didn't miss a single day of snowboarding, hobbled my way to the chairlift, and then spent the next 3 months just sitting at the top of the park, coaching. Athletes would hike the jump, and I would just hang out. And then eventually I was like, and big shout out to those that have helped out. I had to start a little Kickstarter, no,
So
GoFundMe to help
funny.
me pay for an MRI and got an MRI. And they're like, yeah, dude, this thing's destroyed. You need surgery. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, you're literally dumb. That's probably the dumbest thing you could have done because you made it so much worse.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's just one of those things where I don't feel that the pain was significant enough to justify going to get it checked out. And then it just hurt and hurt and hurt and hurt. So, not having insurance makes things pretty rough where it's thousands of dollars to get checked out, or I have to get the surgery and blah, blah. It's just not really a viable option. And for those that are in the full time industry of snowboarding, it's really challenging to make ends meet living up in a ski resort or a ski resort town or mountain town. It's just really challenging. You got to have multiple jobs. You got to be on the grind to even survive, let alone have extra income. And that's kind of a tangent, so to speak, but it's been, it's a big factor in all of that is just being able to afford proper medical care is not easy. That goes on
Yeah.
to another subject we should talk about later that I'm really excited about that has a big emotional connection. I'm starting a foundation and I'm really pushing some energy into it, but we should keep going to the hip. And then obviously you got to stay tuned. We'll talk about this foundation that I'm really excited about helping other snowboarders and skiers.
That's super sick. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. But yeah, with your hip, I mean, a torn labrum, honestly, when you first told me about that, I didn't even know what it was, which I mean, bad on me. I should know what that is. But most of my stuff that I have knowledge on is more muscles. And so the interior of your hip, that's wild because it's not something that one, things like that don't heal easily, which is definitely why you needed surgery because like tendons, ligaments, those kinds of things, like they don't get a lot of blood flow. So the healing process is insane, especially if you're still using it and doing an impact sport like snowboarding.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So you eventually did save up enough money to get surgery then, and you've been snowboarding. This was your first season snowboarding post surgery, right?
Yeah, so ended up getting surgery August 15th of 2022, and they had estimated that I would be off my snowboard for between 6 to 8 months. So I just was like, accept the fact that I'm not going to snowboard at all this winter. I might be coming back at that time would put me at about March coming back time. And then I was just 100% committed to coming back to snowboarding as soon as possible, within reason, of course. And I grinded. So luckily, I had surgery, arthroscopic labrum repair, and they put 4 screws in there and sucked out a bunch of the debris that was in there and just put it all back together. And the craziest thing, 4 hours after surgery, they had me on a bike pedaling for 20 minutes. Granted, I was being assisted, they helped me. And a lot of their thought process was let's get the body to move and groove to minimize the scar tissue development. And I was all on board. And I had a nerve block. So I
Mhm.
couldn't feel anything anyways. So to me, it didn't really matter. So paddling,
You still do, don't you?
a
You
nerve
can't
block.
feel anything? I thought you said that you can't
Oh,
feel anything.
oh, okay. Well, interesting. If I couldn't feel anything, I would have no pain. I'd be stoked. But that's not the case. So on the side of my leg where the IT band is, for about 6 inches wide and about probably 15 inches long, my whole leg on the outside, like the skin is completely numb. I can't feel anything. I had a one day where I was snowboarding and I had like a needle or something in my pocket. No, it was a safety pin because I was holding my pocket together. And the safety pin was stabbing my leg, and I didn't realize it until it was actually like bleeding. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So, more of the story is like, I got right into surgery, got right into physical therapy twice a day, 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. every day, twice a day for the first 25 days, and just grinded. And then after that, I was on PT once a day plus pool PT. So I could do a lot of full range of motion movement
Yeah,
without impact.
yeah.
And I was grinding, working so hard to just recover and move and recover. And I was making such big gains. Like every day was like a big deal.
Mhm.
And that was super cool just to see that progress. And then by October 30th, I went snowboarding.
Yeah,
And
I
now
remember you specifically putting something on your stories being like, "Don't tell my doctors." So I'm gonna guess you were not cleared for that.
I was actually cleared at 2 months, and I waited another 2 weeks only because there was no resort open. But I got cleared middle of October, cleared. They're like, yep, 100%. They did all these tests. They're like, you're good. We've never seen somebody progress as fast as you. And yeah, you're cleared. You can go snowboard tomorrow if you wanted. And I was like, I would, but there's no resorts open. So then, like 2 weeks later, I did go snowboard. And what I was really meaning was in within 30 feet of my very first turn, I may or may not have tried a frontside 360. Don't tell my doctor. But if the two big things I was going through my mind during the whole process after getting hurt, getting back on snow, going through summer camp, and going through this injury is based on breaking my back. It took me years to overcome the mental aspect of overcoming fear. So this time around, I was like, no matter what, I'm not going to allow fear to control me. That
Yeah.
was the intent. That was the goal. So even when I had my injury this season before and I took that fall, as I discussed earlier, I really made it a big effort that I was not going to necessarily avoid stuff or build a mental block because I'm scared. So that was a big mission. So my goal going into that season was let's just try something. The doctor said I was clear. The doctor said I'm not going to do anything worse. There's no way I can tear it. Everything's good. Let me do a 360 to overcome the fear to know that it's not a big deal. But the
Mhm.
second thing was I need to evaluate my body so that I can either determine I need to take more time off or I need to go back into the gym and specifically work on these exact movements that I'm feeling on the slope and try to mimic them in the gym. And so, yeah, I did a 360 and it really highlighted the fact that retraction movements were a bit painful. Cool. Go back to the grind of the gym and just focus on that. And that was like a big, that was my mindset. Now, is it the most smart mindset? I don't know. But we're here.
I mean, as long as you're cleared, I don't think that it wasn't a smart decision. It does suck that you still deal with like retracting pain. And I feel like there are ways to make that go away, but also it really just depends on what's going on the inside because the pain that you're feeling, from what I remember, was more in your hip flexor and less in like your torn labrum area. So to me, that almost sounds like overuse of your hip flexor, or you're just relying on something and not using something else. But it's hard to say because it also could be like scar tissue or it could be like something else that would have to be taken out surgically, which is obviously not the goal.
Fingers crossed, right? And I definitely agree because I definitely neglected most likely certain muscle groups or certain muscles or certain movement patterns for the 6 years prior to surgery, 7 years since that incident. So, like, yeah, my body's adjusted, adapted, and overcame certain things that may just now they work right, but the body's overcompensated in a different way. So I feel like that's what I'm dealing with, but I really don't know. And I've been seeing a PT once a week. This guy's been working on my hip and stuff. And obviously, you're not here. You're in Arizona. I'm in Colorado. But I've been seeing this guy named Josh. He's been super awesome and trying to help facilitate just loosening stuff up, trying to get things to fire, to get things rocking and rolling. Because my goal this winter is to snowboard 200 days in a year, 200 days in a row. That's the
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah.
And I've been very close. I've hit about 180 days in a row before. And so I really want to do that while I'm still young enough to do that. But at the same time, I got a busted hip. So I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it anyways.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, that's my goal. I want to see if I can hit 100 this year. I did 2 years ago, but after my collarbone, just working and becoming an adult, wasn't able to do that. So hopefully this year I'll have the freedom to, because that'd be sick. At least like some half days in there. But
Yeah.
you kind of mentioned fear earlier, so I do kind of want to talk about that. Like obviously it's a massive thing for a lot of people. I'm sure we touched on it on the last podcast too, but you kind of said like testing your body both on snow and off snow was a way to reduce your fear. So do you kind of want to discuss that for maybe other people that are dealing with fear or afraid of trying things for the fear of injury or just whatever it may be?
Yeah, of course. And for me, there's I've had so much struggle with fear that I've figured out a couple different methods for me to minimize that. And one that has really helped me, especially in this situation, is putting in the work.
Mhm.
Trusting the fact that my body is healed and that my body is strong. And no matter what I put at it, I'm going to be okay, relatively
Mhm.
speaking. And so it's like, I just put a lot of emphasis on putting in the work and trusting that. So the moment that I get on snow, my body and mind are connected in terms of I've put in the work. That's been like a big deal. And then the second big thing is just not allowing it to be an option. The more I contemplate, the more I process, the more I think about stuff, the more I build the fear up in my head. Let's say I'm going to hit a jump or a cliff. If I spend all day thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, and scoping it out and riding by it and just trying to perfectly analyze everything that's going on with that jump or cliff, all of a sudden that cliff is at least 10,000 times bigger versus I trust my skill. I know how to put my body in the right body position. I know how to handle it. I know how to adjust and adapt. Let's just do it. Get it out of the way. And one of my biggest fears in snowboarding is really, really big jumps. They terrify me. And
Same.
it's not fun at all because I go hit a medium-sized jump I'll hit it switch, I'll do it one-footed, absolutely no problems. And then I go over to the large line and jump one is fine. Jump two is fine, but it's always the third one. And I build it up into my head. And every year I have to battle that fear of just, oh, it's the third jump. And most times it's like not that bad, but I build it up. So it's just trying to minimize my mind going down that path. And that's
Mhm.
really what I put my focus on with my hip injury.
Yeah, and I think just knowing, like, your skill level, like, being very cognizant into, like, where you are, like, obviously, you know what you've done, you know what you can do in your sleep, and you know what things are a little bit more difficult and etcetera. Like, you've been snowboarding for forever, and so you, like, you know you can hit that big jump line, but you're, like, in your head about it, right?
Yep.
Whereas, like, someone else, like me, for example, I'd be like, "Okay, I know I can hit that rail, but I'm super in my head about it," because the idea of eating it on that rail trumps the fact that I know I can do it. And so I think what's really important for people is knowing and really figuring out like, am I actually capable of doing that? Or is it scary because in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe this is too big for me, or maybe my skills are not quite there for this. And like being able to decipher the two, I think is a really big way to kind of get rid of fear because if you know you're like, I can do this, realistically, I can do this, then you can kind of be like, okay, get out of my head, just get it done. Whereas you don't and you don't put yourself in a situation where, like, you could get hurt because it is too much for you.
I find a lot of people are on one side or the other of this like spectrum. Your skills are here, but you limit what you really do because you're scared and nervous. Or
Mhm,
your skills are way down here, yet you're an absolute sender, but what you're trying to do, what you're attempting is not balanced with your actual skill set. So for me, I understand where my skill set is, and I know exactly where that level of risk or consequences is. Well, then I just want to make sure those are balanced, or my skill set is higher. And the longer you're in the sport, the more you can evaluate that. And I see it all the time. Specifically, I ride copper all the time, and there's a large jump line and a medium jump line. And you get people who just show up on the large line, and they're like, they may ask me, "Hey, how many brake checks are into the jump?" Well, to me, brake checks is an indication that you might not be as advanced of a snowboarder because you technically we call it speed checks. So your vocabulary might actually be a little bit off. And this is a true story. I've seen this happen. And
yeah,
then, I evaluate like, hey, have you ever hit those jumps? And they're like, no, I was going to hit these. But there's no understanding of the difference of skill set that is required or the distance or the consequence and risk. So really trying to find that balance. And then I work with a lot of competitive athletes historically. And our goal and my goal in my coaching philosophy is if we're going to attempt this trick, you should land it within 3 tries.
yeah,
That means you have the skills to be able to land it within 3 tries. And most times I develop their skills so they land it first try. I've had a kid do double backflip first try. He did double back 10 first try because he's set up for it. But it's not that we've just been holding him back so long, but he has every skill and he's proven to me. So, real quick, an example would be double back 10 is where you go, you do a 1080 and you flip inverted twice. Okay, cool. Go prove that in Woodward, which at
yeah,
Copper, big shout out to Copper. It's a jump into a foam pit. Go prove to me you can do it.
yeah,
Okay, now let's go take it to a real jump, the real world, because you've proven to me you're ready. And I do that in my own snowboarding. I'm going to go try this trick. Okay, how do I prove to myself that I'm ready? If I know I'm ready and I have the skill and I can land it relatively soon, then I'm not scared. I'm confident. But if I'm like, feel like I'm super far off, what skills do I need? So it's a very simple but logical approach to how I snowboard is skill development.
mhm. Yeah, and I think that's really key. Skill development on snow, skill development off snow, whatever you choose to do, I think is like one of the most important things. And just like being in tune with your body and your skill level. Like so many people are terrified to do something. And yeah, like you said, it can be either one of the spectrum, or you could have that in between and still be scared. But it's knowing what you're capable of, what your body's capable of. And just honestly sending it at that point if you know it's something that you're capable of and you know that it's something that you can accomplish, like you said, within a few tries. But I think having that knowledge of what you can do and what you can't do, and like if it's a trick specifically, like truly understanding that trick, the mechanics of the trick, and all of that is going to just make a huge difference in like your fear. You're always going to be scared. You're always going to be nervous that first try. But then once you kind of try it and you're like, okay, that wasn't that bad, then that fear normally kind of goes down. Then you can really like stop blacking out and actually like get into the trick.
Yeah, and that's a very good point that you brought up. At some point, you got to do it. You got to go for it. You can prove to me, your coach, your peers, whoever it is, 1,000 times, but at some point, got to rip the band-aid off and you got to do it. But our goal is to minimize the risk and minimize the consequences in that situation. And that's where I've enjoyed coaching, and my coaching philosophy just comes back from, or comes, is highly influenced from the amount of injuries that I've had. And at the end of the day, if we can develop more skills, reduce injuries, you give the athletes a better chance of success. But to our most common snowboarder, the weekend warrior, you just want to have fun, but I don't want to be injured all the time, or I don't want to be in the hospital all the time, or I got to go work tomorrow, or I have kids to feed, whatever it is. So there's still the same, the principles apply the same. Develop your skill and make sure you're ready for whatever that next thing is. And I feel when I make YouTube content and I do those step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 style videos, do really well because you can progress your way from not really knowing what a carve is to being able to actually carve in these super simple steps. And then it just minimizes the risk, minimizes the fear, but then you also feel very accomplished. So definitely think that approach, whether you're trying to go for a gnarly trick and be a competitive Olympic athlete, or you just want to have fun, taking just a logical, progressive thought process just helps you stay on your feet.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing. And unfortunately, like people are just, they get in their head. I'm so common or I'm so guilty of this. It's just getting in your head, being like, fear is going to overrule me for the day. And there's so many times that people are like, I want to do this, but fear is just the too much. Like my biggest setback in snowboarding is fear. The reason I can't progress is fear or whatever. I feel like that's like the most common thing that I get told. And I feel like I've seen on your post as well, is like that's like the most common uh comment. It's just like, yeah, this is cool, but I'll never try this because I'm terrified. And I think like that's fair to an extent. But then I also think that once you know that you are ready for something like that, or even not like some hypothetical trick that's super crazy, but just like you're ready to take the next step and you should be progressing. You've been snowboarding for a long time and you've been stuck in this like realm of I can't get better. Like that's when you need to basically reevaluate why you can't get better. Is it fear? Is it body mechanics? Is it skill? Or are you just holding yourself back at that point?
Yeah. And to add to that, I'm going to generalize fear. And obviously, this is not applicable to everyone, but what you're attempting versus your preparedness is not equal. So
Yeah.
if I'm going to go hit this gnarly rail, but I feel like I'm going to die on the way in, obviously that's terrifying. And then when you're in a fear-based state, your muscles, your body react completely different, therefore creating an additional roadblock to how to that outcome. So if we could relax, feel prepared, it's like me going in my car and going 4 miles an hour. I'm not really scared of that because I know that, I have the skill, blah, blah, blah. I've been doing this forever. But me going into a NASCAR or F1 car driving 200 miles an hour, I'm going to be extremely fearful until I've developed the confidence and the preparation, the skill to get there. Then it's just got to be proportional. And I believe where most people are lacking, as I was as well, is the fundamental skills and the amount of times you've been successful gives you that confidence and gives you that mindset that I'm going to be okay. And I minimize the fear. Again, if I'm hitting a 100-foot cliff, is a different fear than a 5-foot cliff. But to some people, they've hit a 100-foot cliff 100,000 times. It's just a walk in the park. And
Mhm.
that's our goal, or my goal for people, is just to be prepared and feel good and have that ability.
Mhm.
But it goes back to the logical progression. I am terrified to do this. okay, what are the 5 ways or 5 steps that I need to get there to not be scared? And by the time I'm there, it's not even a big deal anymore. And that's where I would love to even see your riding go. And Kaylee went to summer camp with me. If you didn't catch that on Ep1, she's doing tame dogs off of this freaking gnarly little jump and sending it to the bottom. But we didn't just say, Kaylee, send it. That's not my coaching style. What were the steps that we took to get you to be prepared to just give it your first attempt? Do you remember?
Yeah, so the main thing was obviously at Mount Hood we have access to an airbag, which not everyone does. So if your goal is to go inverted for the first time, like definitely find a patch of powder if you don't have access to an airbag or a trampoline or something. Like do it in a less challenging situation first. But yeah, we went to an airbag and like I've been inverted before, just not on the snowboard. Like I have flipping skills, but the idea of flipping sideways to me has always been weird because I like was just trained, front flip, back flip, like gymnastic style stuff.
Yeah.
And so going sideways has just always been like an idea to me that I was like, I can't do that. That doesn't make any sense in my mind. So we took it to the airbag and immediately right off the bat, like obviously you can't really land in an airbag, you slip out, but it felt like I landed it. And so I was like, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad. And like I was literally like pounding my chest, like going up to it the first time to try and do an airbag. I was like, I'm gonna die right now. Like I'm terrified. And once I did it that one time, I was like, oh, cool. And like that fears immediately went away once I did it the one time. And it's because I knew I could flip. I knew I wasn't going to die going into an airbag. And I knew what I had to do. It's basically a cartwheel. I tuck and I try and land. And I try and spot my landing. Like that's what it was. So it's like, okay, you break it down from this, 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 and this. You take it into a scenario where you're not going to die. And then you try it that one time. And you're like, okay, that's not that scary. So I did it like 4 or 5 times in the airbag. Seemed like I was landing as much as you can in an airbag. So you're like, cool, guess we're just gonna go take it to the snow and see what happens. Same thing, got to the snow, was like my heart was pounding out of my chest, but I was like, okay, I did it. I'm not gonna die. Like I know what I have to do. So the very first time I tried it on the jump was absolutely terrifying, but I didn't die. I didn't land it, but I didn't die. So I was like, okay, we're gonna try it again. Never actually landed it, mainly because I'm really good at getting in my head. But I do now know why I was doing it wrong. I have a bunch of videos of me doing it wrong. So I can break those down and be like, you should practice this, this, and this. Find a patch of powder again. Try it again. Now that it'll be a new season, haven't done it in a while. And then hopefully land it.
And I love that you talked about just that progression. And at some point, you got to rip the Band-Aid off and go. At the same time, you did it in such a safe environment to minimize the consequences. And that is just a testament to why coaching slash these opportunities is so valuable, because you can progress quickly, but it's in as safe as possible. And there's always going to be some kind of risk, but just trying to minimize that risk and taking the steps. It's not just go huck and hope. It's not a viable option.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like for me personally, and I know that this is not going to work for everyone, but this is why I started Snow Functional in the first place, is because like fear was so big. And especially after I hurt myself, like that fear was insane for me. Like when I first started snowboarding, I was dumb and like did a bunch of dumb stuff. And so I was like, okay, I was constantly hurting myself, but it was never a real injury. And so in my mind, I was like, whatever, I'm not going to actually get hurt. It never happened before, type of thing. Like, yeah, I'd have bruises, probably concussed myself multiple times.
Whoops.
But I was like, oh, it's fine. And so I would never really progress. I was never really getting what I wanted. And then eventually when I did hurt myself, I was like, wow, my body's really not capable of this. And there's massive like risk to it. Like it clicked in my head. I was like, there's actual like risk to what I'm doing. And so when I started taking it back and being like, okay, what is my body actually capable of? And what can I achieve off the snow? Like, okay, I don't have the mechanics to do this, or this is really difficult, or this hurts, or whatever it may be. I'm really unstable here. then it's like, okay, that I know that in my head that I need to work on that. So why would I try and attempt something that requires that of me in a scarier situation on snow with a board strapped to me when I know I can't even do it without that? So like just having that knowledge and being able to see myself progress off the snow made it so much easier to progress on the snow because I was like, okay, my body is capable of that. And on top of that, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And I had like, I ride with friends. So like having a friend that's better than me and be like, look, I can do it. It's not that scary. I know you can do it. And then you just try it the one time. You're like, okay, now the fear's gone. Like the fear is always going to be there when you're trying something new. But when you have it in the back of your mind of like, okay, I should be able to do this. Let me just get it over with. It just makes it so much easier to progress after you get that one like done with.
And that's cool that you just said that the fear is always going to be there. And I completely agree. If you don't know Chris Corning, he's a gnarly snowboarder. Dude's doing 1800s and more. And I did a little YouTube video with him. And that dude's a gnarly top of the line dude who's trying to squeeze out 1% more out of whatever trick he's doing. That dude has fear. But the threshold that it's at is way up here compared to where maybe I am or some other people are. So it's like fear is always a thing, but can we push that threshold as high as possible? And that's a very fun way to snowboard because I've instructed and coached for 15 years. And I have people who have never snowboarded in their life go snowboard and they're like, this is the most fun thing I've ever done. And to me, I can't comprehend that because there's so much more out there. Now imagine you're a better snowboarder and you can go ride double black diamonds, go do a 360 on moguls and just have fun. Because
Mm-hmm.
you're better and you have more skill set, it's more fun. So like stoked on those dudes who are sliding sideways, heel side hero, having the best day of their life. But there's so much more. So if you're better at something, it opens up the opportunities for more tricks, more exploration, more travel. There's so much more out there when you do have those skills. And that's where I put so much effort and emphasis on body position, biomechanic, the mechanics of snowboarding, so that you have this foundation that applies to as many things as possible so that you just love snowboarding and you can progress and be involved and stay in the industry. What I don't want to have people do is just go snowboard and catch edges all day and hate it and go play Fortnite or something else. And I play video games, but I want people to snowboard and
Yeah.
stay snowboarding.
Definitely. I know. Stay snowboarding. I mean, there's a lot of people. I get comments all the time from people being like, I'm older and I'm just learning this year. This is like my second, third year, and I need tips so that I don't die and I don't get hurt. I'm like, yes, like I want you to enjoy this, even though you're being like you are older or whatever, and you're inevitably more at risk for injury, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it if you're taking the right steps and you are learning the basics and the foundation so that you can actually progress to where you want to go. That doesn't mean you have to go throw a 10, but if your goal is to be able to do like a flat 360 and like the idea of catching an edge doing that is absolutely terrifying to you, then there you go. Like now you can learn the mechanics of where your pressure should be on your edge so that you don't do that.
Yeah. And we talked about it a little bit last time on the last previous episode, but having the ability to do anything you want on a snowboard is so cool. And then I was going to do this video, and I'm going to do this video where it's like, if I were to start snowboarding all over, how would I progress as quick as possible? And what would be the steps? And I think that would be really fun for new and beginner snowboarders to have like a blueprint of what is a fast, progressive, safe way to do it. And there's definitely a lot of things that I would do differently having the information I have now. So that's one video I would like to create in hopes to help just more people.
Yeah, and I like to say this all the time. I'm sure I mentioned it in the last episode too. Is like one, I would love to see that video because I know I'd benefit from it also. Because I genuinely feel like I'm trying to start at like square one again. Like obviously I know how to snowboard, I know how to carve, but I picked up so many bad habits when I started that I almost feel like those first 3 years are kind of like meaningless to me at this point because I really didn't learn anything that helped me. I just ended up getting stuck and getting hurt, and the mechanics that I rode with caused me to get stuck. And so, yeah, like obviously I learned stuff during them, but I progressed more in 16 days this last season than I ever did riding with better mechanics, better strength, better pop, better stability, all those types of things that I'm kind of like, okay, let me kind of start at square one and start this progression all over to get where I actually want to be because I wasn't making those steps. I wasn't hitting those goals back in my first 3 years of snowboarding.
And you don't know what you don't know. And then when you've been in it for a long time, then yeah, you look back at it and see, oh, here's my inefficiencies. But that's also the best part about snowboarding. And there's always some place to go, somewhere to improve. And that is, yeah, just clearing up and cleaning up the fundamentals just makes such a big impact. And that's, as a coach or a snowboarder, how can I make the biggest impact with the least amount of work? That's a pretty big deal. And when it comes down to better body positions and biomechanic, uh, being in a more biomechanically optimized position, you're just giving yourself a better chance for success. And we talked about it last time with, what style means and all that, but just giving ourselves like a nice foundation and then take it wherever you want. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So let's kind of pivot a little bit since we're kind of hitting a lot of the stuff we talked about before. And let's talk about like your coaching, like how you got into coaching, all of the certs that you have, why you failed them a million times. But let's kind
How
of get,
dare you?
let's kind of get into like what that entails and all the different freestyle and even non-freestyle coaching or certifications that you have, and then coaching like athletes that want to go to the Olympics and do all the crazy stuff.
Yeah, I got into coaching because I had bills to pay. I had medical bills pay, and I was a competitive athlete at the time, and I was no longer willing to push my boundaries. And my ex or my coach at the time had said, "Hey, we have a position open for a weekend program. Do you want to coach 8 kids between the ages of like 10 to 13, and you go snowboard with them every weekend?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, fine, sounds good." I had multiple other jobs, but that was a way that I could ride on the weekend. Started getting into that, and I really loved sharing my knowledge and having an impact on other snowboarders other than just riding around with them. My goal was to help them become a better snowboarder and whatever that means to them. And then I got an opportunity to go coach with another program as an assistant coach, and it was more competitive athletes with a gentleman named Jim Smith. Big shout out to him. He was running this program. We had 12 kids. I was the assistant coach, and he was the main dude, and I was helping out as much as I could. And then that was like a really big pivotal moment in my coaching career because I went full time and I really enjoyed the sharing of my knowledge. Moving forward from that, met a couple awesome people, started doing some private coaching in Australia, down in Australia. So in the summers, I'd spend time in Australia traveling around. And then in the Northern Hemisphere, we'd travel around to various competitions. And I've been to Czech Republic and Turkey and across the United States coaching this athlete. And I was private coaching him. So it was really cool to be able to private coach because you can design an entire program around the needs of one person. They need time doing this, this, and this. That energy that I put in is not being diluted by others, which can be very beneficial for the right person. So went down to Australia, spent some time there. But part of the deal of me getting this job was I had to go through instructor certifications, and that just improves my knowledge base, but it also gives me some credentials to get into certain events and have a lot more authority at these events and whatnot. So putting time into the certification process was probably one of my favorite times in my snowboarding career. Because imagine going snowboarding with people who want to get you better, both in terms of your skill set and your technical knowledge of snowboarding. And you're constantly getting somebody to coach you and give you feedback and coach you and give you feedback. And indirectly, you don't have to pay for it. So I was an instructor at that time. And at Vail and these large resorts, they have whatever day would be Tuesday, you can go to certification training. And then you show up with, 5, 10 other people, and you just geek out on this level of certification. And then you go to certification, hopefully you pass, you move to the next to the next. So my little claim to fame is I was to my knowledge, is the only person who's ever done Cert 1, Cert 2, and Cert 3 in AASI. It's never been done before. And it was an absolute grind, and it was a very ambitious thing. It's never been done. And when you get to those higher certification levels, the technical knowledge is very high. Your demonstrations of technical skills, while snowboarding is very high and you have to be on point. If you're not on point, you fail. And so I was able to go through that certification process extremely fast, which was very motivating. It was motivated because I was trying to obtain a job, but it was also just so fun to have just geek out, nerd out on every aspect of snowboarding. So any of those instructors out there, it's a very fun process. And while you're in it, enjoy it, because you get to a point, if you move up the ladder, there's not any more certifications that you can do to at a certain point. And then you start leading those certifications or those training, and you learn in a very different way. And I just loved when somebody was, you're doing this wrong, do it better. I'm like, this is amazing. So the certification process was so fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
So all of your certs are AASI, or do you also do like the PSAI? What are the differences?
Yeah, great question. PSIA is the ski form of professionals ski instructor association, whatever it is. And then there's the snowboarding side is AASI, but they're the same umbrella, just ski snowboard. And then you have a couple different organizations in the United States that are coaching certification based. And I have a couple of those. I've not maxed out on those, but I've maxed out on the snowboarding instructor side of things. Both of them bring very unique and different viewpoints on snowboarding. Yeah, my goal was to never become robotic as a snowboarder or only do it one way. What I want to do is take all these information, all this nerd, and apply it and elevate my riding, but just apply it to my riding in a way that I see fit, because I don't want to necessarily do these certain instructor moves and that's how I snowboard now. I want to snowboard the way I snowboard, but allow that to benefit my riding. So anybody's really interested in getting some awesome experience and trying to improve your snowboarding, become an instructor for a season. It'll blow your mind. The camaraderie, the vibe, the energy is so fun. Opportunities to train and nerd out. It will completely change your perspective on snowboarding in a very beneficial way. Plus, when you speak or communicate a concept about snowboarding, the more you understand it and the more you practice it, the easier it is to explain. If you don't really understand it, it's hard to explain. And there's a very cool exchange of, when I know more, I can explain it in a more simple manner. And that becomes really fun. It's an artwork, an art.
Yeah.
Sometimes less is more and more is less.
Yeah, I want to do it honestly just for my own benefit. Like
Mhm.
realistically, I might do like a couple instruction things for people, but like that's not going to be my job. It's not my goal, but I do want to get my cert just for my own knowledge to better my own snowboarding. And like basically what you said, like I'm kind of a nerd in that realm
Mhm.
where I want to fully understand how something's done. And also I think it just benefited my snowboarding so much more when I understood like what my body should be doing and how my board should be moving and where the pressure is and all that kind of stuff just helps me improve a lot. So I think doing that would just be, yeah, like fun. Honestly, it would just be fun.
Yeah, extremely fun. And then you get to share the love of snowboarding with other people, and you can have them love snowboarding more. I got one day I was instructing, quick little story time. This mother dropped off her skiing daughter to a snowboard lesson. And she's like, the daughter's, I want to learn to snowboard. And mom comes up to me and says, I am really upset. She wants to snowboard. Please don't let her enjoy this. And I'm like in a moral dilemma, because to me, do I abide by the customer? Or do I abide by the culture and snowboarding and what the kid wants? So, and so it's almost a challenge. Like, you want me to not make her love snowboarding? Oh, she's gonna love snowboarding. So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, love snowboarding, absolutely killed it. Super stoked. I saw the kid the next year, and she was probably like 10 years old or whatever. Saw her the next year, and the mom just came up to me and apologized. She's like, I'm so sorry the way I treated you. I shouldn't have said that. I appreciate how much she loves snowboarding, because it gets the family to go to the mountain, or else I don't think we'd be here. And it was just this really interesting like perspective. But the goal is to get people to love snowboarding. And if I can have an impact or a part of that, it's one-on-one, it's on 5 people. You just like really have an impact on somebody's life and career, and can completely change the direction of their life, hopefully in a positive way, that is
Mhm.
very fun and very cool to do.
Yeah, I love it when I hear someone be like, "Oh, I just started," and it's literally like my favorite thing ever. Like I had a call with someone who just wanted like some more fitness tips for stuff, but she was like, "Yeah, I started snowboarding and I was just supposed to do it for that one season. Like that was just going to be like my one and done." But she's like, "But I'm absolutely obsessed. So I moved to a mountain and now I'm learning to like be an instructor. Like this is all I'm doing now." And I was like, "That's so sick." Like I love it when people are like, "This is everything." I think like that's what's so cool about snowboarding is like, yeah, for some people it is a hobby and like that's totally fine. And then like for other people, they're like, this is my entire life. Like I go through the entire year just trying to snowboard and all I think about is snowboarding. And I don't think there's like a right or wrong way, but I just think it's so cool that like for like some other sports, some other hobbies, like that's not really what happens, but it is cool that that is something that happens with snowboarding.
Yeah, and then you get a lot of people have these nerdy, amazing snowboard degrees, or sorry, degrees, and they spend a lot of money going to college, and then
Uh-huh.
all they do is snowboard now, which I think is just so funny because snowboarding can be a complete lifestyle if you want it to be. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. It is not easy creating a living just snowboarding or living in a snowboard town. A lot of times you get a job and you're like, oh, I'm moving to the mountains, going to be awesome. And you get a job and then you have to get another job and then you snowboard 2, 3 days a week because you have to work to be even able to survive here. It's not an easy lifestyle by any means.
Yeah, it does suck that like yeah, the barrier to entry of snowboarding is big, but I also think that sometimes it seems bigger than it necessarily has to be. Like, yeah, our season passes are super expensive, our gear is super expensive, but then it's kind of like a one and done type of thing for the most part. So then like your first year's a big deal to get into it. Your next year might not be that bad, just your season pass. But it is crazy how expensive living in literally any mountain town, it doesn't matter where. Like all of them are so incredibly expensive. And then like working at a resort is like minimum wage. Like it's just so like I hate that that's the case. Like even the town that I live in now, everyone is calling it the next fail, which is
Mm.
so unfortunate because yeah, we have like it's the biggest ponderosa pine forest where I live, like the largest connecting ponderosa pine forest, and half of our forest is getting taken down for more housing, just a bunch of apartments and condos and like little like we have these golf courses and Steph Curry owns a house, Kanye West owns a
Oh
house.
wow.
Like it's turning into just like no one actually lives here.
Yeah.
All these rich people just buy it out and no one that actually lives here can afford to live here anymore. And it sucks because that's totally what happened to Vale. And I hate that that's even a thing that happens. I know it's just the name of the game, but it does suck that that's like something that happens in this sport and that it's like there's these two polar opposites of like maybe more so in skiing than in snowboarding, but I think honestly in both of like this elitist thing, your vacation, it's like was so known to be like a rich person sport. And then there's like the ski bums, snowboard bums are just like, I barely can afford to eat, but this is my entire life and this is all I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard balance and there's like it's a double-edged sword because having one pass that has so many resorts that you can go to, pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like going go-karting and it's like 50 times every time you go. So if I go 10 times in a year, I spent $500. The season pass is like $700 and I go 200 days a year. It's pretty darn affordable breaking it down like that. But if you're buying a season pass going once, yeah, it's extremely hard. So there's definitely a lot of associated costs, but we've gotten to a point where there is really nice infrastructures. There's really nice amenities. There's really nice runs and high speed chairs and all these things, and it's a double edged sword because more money in the industry allows for more opportunity and abundance. So yeah, i'm
Mm-hmm.
i'm kind of in the middle because you want it to
You want people to get
stay.
into it.
Yeah, you want people to get into it and you want it to be economical, but you also want the nice things. So it's like a really hard thing. And I remember back in the day, ski passes were $1,800 for like 4 resorts. Now you get like freaking so many resorts and it was like $700. And I went to Japan and got to snowboard 13 resorts and never paid for a ticket.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Definitely. It is crazy though. I don't know if you know who they are. Their names are Anton and Daria. They're snowboard instructors in Austria, I think. But they
Mm,
have an Instagram account called Quick Snow Teach where they do like breakdowns and stuff. And I
cool.
just recently did a podcast with them, and they were saying that in Austria, in Europe, their season pass, I think it's like almost half the price of what we pay for an Icon or an Epic.
Mm.
And they were like, yeah, some of the resorts are far away. You have to travel like an hour, 2 hours. I was like, they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's like 50 in this like general vicinity. You just like get on a train and it's like right there. I was like, that's insane. I was like, we have a lot of resorts too, but you gotta travel to Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I want to get into a lot more this year is trying to travel, going to Europe and stuff, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. It'd be super cool. So I guess kind of going into it, you have goals for the season, you have a foundation. I feel like this might kind of correspond to what we were just talking about with making snowboarding more accessible, helping more snowboarders.
So, yeah, good question. So, going into this season, and I kind of did a little bit last year, but this year would be my, I'm going to say official full first year of full-time content creation. And going into that, I've, last 15 years of my life, I've coached snowboarding and most of my energy has gone into snowboarding. Last year, I spent a lot of time just recovering and not snowboarding. But going into this year, yeah, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to spend more time and more energy on creating content. And that does mean creating more entertainment content to hopefully get more people introduced into the ski resorts and the snowboarding and the skiing aspect of our life and our culture through some entertainment content, but also providing a lot of educational content for both the beginner, intermediate, and advanced riders. So this season, I'm diving like full in on content. And historically, I've posted every day on TikTok or sorry, on Instagram specifically. But going into this season, I'm going to put a lot more energy into full length videos on YouTube. So I was planning on doing like 30 days of 30 videos, which I've never done. Usually I put out one piece of content a week, but being able to put a lot more of my personality into the videos, talking about my struggles, my challenges, my fears, overcoming stuff, and then continuing doing educational content and a lot of that stuff, but doing a lot more vlogs this year, which I'm really looking forward to, and
Yeah.
just putting out as much valuable content as possible.
Mhm. Yeah, that's super sick. Content creation is hard because, like, honestly, this is just a genuine question for me, but how do you even come up with concepts to get like posts out every day? Like, especially if you're gonna be doing more of the educational stuff, like, how do you kind of decipher of like, this is what I want to show, or this would be a good concept? Like, how do you kind of roll through all of that?
That's a great question. And honestly, I've done a very not as awesome of a job as I would like. A lot of times I would just show up in the morning, come up with an idea and film it. And it wasn't as thought out. It wasn't as optimal as possible. It wasn't thorough. So going into this season, I have just lists on lists on lists of content ideas, body part concepts, ideas. And so when I'm doing Instagram content, it's more like reading a comment or what makes sense right now or what am I feeling. And sometimes that can be really cool. And sometimes that can be a bit of a downside. So going into this year, I'm going to just have a lot more ideas and really plan the night before. I
Mhm.
usually don't do that. So again, the better job that I can do presenting information, entertaining content, how I execute that is going to have a direct correlation to how people perceive snowboarding or how much they can improve. So if I can do a better job, then they can hopefully have a better chance of becoming better snowboarders. So yeah, historically, I've done a really bad job on it.
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think anyone would have known that you just thought of that concept, but I understand what you're saying, that it was just kind of sporadic. There was not
Mhm,
like a real plan to it.
mhm.
So if you're going to be doing more like vlog style, is it going to be, I mean, I'm sure it'll be a mix of both, but is it going to be like you vlogging on the mountain, just like hanging out snowboarding, or are you going to do like, I don't know, post mountain or like resort? Like, what do you mean by like resort vlogs, like stuff like that? What do you kind of have in mind?
Yeah, of course. That's a great idea or a great question. Going into every day, I have an idea of what I want to achieve that day. What is the story? What is the challenges? What are the things that we're going to face in that vlog? And not saying that it's pre-scripted by any means, but today's idea is we're going to go all day and only ride Switch. The challenge is riding Switch, and the challenges we got to overcome is the chairlift ride or one footing, those kind of things. So coming into the day with more concepts, and I like to call them e-vlogs, more like educational vlogs. And
I
it's
was like, e-girl or
no, not at all. Like educational vlogs where you're gonna watch this and you're gonna benefit from it. And it might be entertaining, but you're gonna be able to pull a nugget of some kind of information for snowboarding. So I want my stuff to be that, but also highlighting again some of my personality and some of my bad jokes and some of that stuff that I really haven't showcased in the past because my perception of creating content is it's not about me, it's about the end user becoming better. And so I don't put my personality, I don't put little information about me because it's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on how to carve. Cool, we're done. So going into this season, that's what I would like to do is educational content at the resort. Even I have, a lot of ideas that I want to put out there. But yeah, I don't know if that answered the question or not, but here we are.
you should come to Snowball. We can film a vlog.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I want to do is travel a bit more, just depending on how money goes and my hip goes. I definitely want to travel and have the experience of going to new resorts and showcasing that opening day at Copper. What is it like to snowboard in blah blah, or comparing Copper to Arizona, not in a negative way, but objectively speaking, like what is different and not. I don't like content that's clickbaity just to get attention. I don't like just being negative to be negative. Like I'm not like a dramified person like that. So creating what is the difference and what are the benefits? I guarantee I can find benefits of being in Arizona that's better than Colorado.
I don't know. Copper's pretty sick.
It's pretty sick, but there's probably some benefits. So, and certain benefits are going to work better for certain people than other people. And maybe you don't
Yeah.
like the gnarly crowds on the weekend, or you have to live in Denver and sit in traffic all the way down. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe it's really expensive and it's really hard. Or it's cold,
Yeah.
whatever the situation may be. Maybe it's really big and you get lost. Maybe,
Yeah, it's true. You definitely won't get lost at Snowball. I'll tell you that much. There is like a tight community, as I'm sure there probably is in Copper too, but I feel like Copper is more of like a destination for a lot of people. Like more people are going to travel to go to Copper than they are to go to Snowball. So the sense of like community and the like anytime I show up there, like I know a massive amount of people that are there just because you're in tune. It's a small town like type of thing. So it's like, and I won't even know half the people. Like people just yell my name down from the chairlift. I'm like, yo, what's up? Don't know who you are.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of fun because like you could show up alone, and more times than not, you're gonna find someone to ride with.
Yeah, and that's something that I really loved growing up at Beaver Creek is you knew so many people. And yes, it's a destination resort, but there's so many locals there. You don't even need to call people to go snowboard. You just meet people and you go ride and go vibe. And that's that environment. That's pretty cool. The challenging thing about Colorado specifically, as you said, it is a destination, but there's a high turnover rate. So your best friend from last year, you'll probably never see him again because things change, life moves on. And so that's really hard to have friends. Most of my life I spent not having friends because
That emoji.
yeah, you make awesome connections, then they leave because I'm just only here for a year, or it's a gap year between college, or I just don't like snowboarding that much, or I can't afford it. I need to go do something else, or I need to go get a real job. So it's been very challenging having long-term friends. It's an interesting challenge for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Colorado's growing so much too, like so rapidly. Even like last season, I remember seeing so many posts of people sitting in like the most insane traffic from Denver trying to get up to the mountains. I was like, oh my God, it's not even worth it anymore. Because I was considering moving out there, but unless you're living in like the mountain towns, which are really hard to afford and to live in, then you end up going into like Boulder, Denver, and then same kind of thing. You just have to commute, and then it ends up being this super long thing, and then you're basically a weekend warrior at that point, which
Yeah.
like not my goal, not that there's anything wrong with that, but yeah, it's why like it's so great that there's so many more people in it, but yeah, the
Mhm.
consequences are there as well.
Yep. So there's always a pro and con for sure. Yes, I'm really looking forward to going into a lot of content this year and just trying to provide as much value as possible. That's the goal. Hence the reason we're doing these like long form content. Who knows? We might be doing a bunch of these different ideas, different concepts, but just trying to provide value.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm like, if I can make an impact on anyone snowboarding, like that's just sick. Like creating a community, creating or like meeting new people that enjoy the same thing that you do. It's just super cool to see someone benefit from like something that you did that you're like, I don't know if anyone will even care about this. And then someone like it changes their life. You're like, whoa, that's wild.
Power of the internet is an incredible thing.
Yeah. So kind of moving on, what are your other plans for this season other than like being full-time content creation?
Yeah, a couple other goals. I'd like to go to Europe this year or travel. I might go back to Japan. I want to travel more. I feel like as my hip is busted and my body's falling apart, I want to have more experiences. I've gone to travel a decent amount, but being able to experience different mountains and gnarly terrain and stuff that gets your heart racing just because it's freaking gnarly. I want to experience that stuff. I'm really excited to do that. And then really just trying to push Bennett, trying to just put as much quality product out there. And my underlining goal is to have 1 million followers. It sounds absurd, but that's like the goal. Like I want to have an impact on 1 million people's lives. And we've definitely had some impact. And I feel like every year I create the content, it's just getting different and getting better and completely evolving in going in the right direction that I want. And I got a couple ideas going into this season that could help bridge that gap. But I have some wild, ambitious goals. I want to own a resort. I want to have my own tow rope park. I want to
I'm creating that right now.
a tow rope park
Yeah.
at your house. Oh, all right. Well,
No, not at
I'll
my
be there in
house.
5 minutes.
No, not my house. But remember, so for anyone that's not listening, Tommie mentioned it earlier. I'm a nerd. I have an engineering degree. Anyways, my like end of the year project for that was actually me and my friends created a tow rope.
Mhm.
And I mean, it works, but it's not like the most ideal thing in the world. So we're kind of revamping it right now and talking with some local like parks, I guess, little areas in town that have been wanting to set up like a rail garden type of thing, but maybe don't have like that much funding or whatever it may be. So we want to kind of just have people help us like rebuild it, make it
Mhm.
sick, and then gift it to them and then have like a rail garden in town. So that's the goal. We'll see if that happens, but
That'd be so cool. I think the
yeah.
biggest challenge I have is finding land because I could probably get some people around to make a little rig or some kind of tow rope, but having land that I have access to has been like a really big challenge. Like,
Yeah. Land that you own too.
yeah,
Like buying land nowadays, especially in a mountain town,
yeah.
wild.
Yeah, and the right zoning and all that stuff. And my end goal is to not operate a resort. I don't have any interest in that. But if I could own a resort and just go snowboard and do my own thing and have, if you're familiar with DC Mountain Lab, anyone out there? DC Mountain Lab?
Haven't heard of it.
Oh, they had this really cool like videos that they put out, and they had a house in think it was Salt Lake City somewhere, and they had land and they had rope tow and they built dirt jumps and rails and all this stuff, and they made like movie parts at their little place, and they'd have Travis Pastrana come and try to do a backflip on a snowboard, and you can't even do a turn, and so they'd make all these really cool videos. I'm like, oh, I want to do that. As a kid, I watched these videos and just loved it. Imagine going outside and you have perfect jumps, perfect rails all the time, and you just go ride and vibe, and you have your friends come over and you get some music and you just go hang out. That's the kind
Yeah.
of thing that I want to do, is have my own compound of just snowboard stuff and just create something super amazing. And I have this like whole idea of the rope tow goes up the middle, and then you have like these rails and these jumps and these airbags and this. And then most rope tows run flat. So there's like one side goes up, one side goes down, but I want the rope tow to go vertical so that there's a rope that goes up, the higher rope goes up and the bottom rope goes like hip height, but that way you can access that rope either from the left side or the right side. It doesn't matter. So then you could have the
Mhm.
jumps and rails and you could cross over and do all this stuff. And that's like my big dream, is to have my own snowboarding compound, have friends come over, run little camps. Imagine being able to have jumps, rails, rope tow, and it's on a private area that I own. And then I can run camps and have people come over and just have the best time of their life. That's something that I had an investor, a potential investor, and we were working on something years ago, and then COVID happened, and then everything got shut down and never went through. Maybe
Yeah.
it's meant to be, but that's like the goal. It's like, how do I find 10, 15 acres that's like 500, 600 feet wide by 1,500 feet vertical, and you just have like all these options or long lines, and then you could really create this ultimate progression. That's the
Mhm.
goal. Is you have a rail, and Copper did this for a while, is you have the same exact rail like 4 times in a row, but it gets progressively longer. But the technicality of it is the same. It's just you got to hold the trick longer. But imagine being able to hit rails in a row, do a frontside board side 4 times, and you have 1 minute laps. To be able to do 100 front boards, not
Yeah.
even a big deal. That's how
Yeah.
you
And
get
you
good
don't
at
have to
snowboarding.
hike.
Yeah. And then and that's like the big challenge that I face as a coach or trying to create my own thing, is chairlifts, inefficient with time. Hiking, inefficient with energy. We need
Yep.
to minimize both those so you can maximize the output and get 100 high quality front board presses or front boards or board sides or 360s and do it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then you come back the
Yeah.
next day and just do that. So that's big picture. So if anybody wants to help me out here, you let me know. But that's the goal, is to have a compound.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. I want to open like my own version of a Woodward and then have the same kind of thing, both indoor and outdoor type of thing. So, yeah, like Tommy said, if any of you guys are out there and you're billionaires, like just let us know. That'd be sick.
Just shoot me a DM on Instagram. I check them all.
You're a liar.
It gets challenging, and that's a good point. Not diving too far into that. In the winter, I get between 50 and 80 DMs a day. 10 days, I have 800 messages. And it's really hard to keep up with that when somebody's like, hey, I need advice on snowboard. I don't really do product reviews. I don't really give advice on boards because I'm very one dimensional. I buy a board, I love it, and I just ride that same model for the next 10 years. And I don't change because I would rather work on my own riding than trying to adjust to a board. So then it's hard for me to have all these experiences on these other boards, because I don't want to send you in the wrong direction, say this board's the sickest thing ever and you hate it, or vice versa. This board sucks, but it might have changed your life. So I don't like doing product reviews, but it's hard to answer every single DM. But I also am not the person who's going to hire somebody to answer my DMs, because I don't want, you don't have the advice that I have and you're coming to me for advice. So like, how do I land this 360? Well, if I have somebody, a virtual assistant, it's like, yeah, sick, good job. It's unauthentic. I want to be authentic. I don't want to hire people to artificially run my accounts. It's just not what I want to do. And so that's been like really challenging, to answer every single DM and to be able to respond to everybody. It's a lot. If you know, even a minute a person, you're like, so I wake up at 9, or I wake up and get to the resort at 8. I'm recording from 9 to 12. And then from like 1 to 8 o'clock at night, I'm editing, putting out content, and I try to get some sleep. But then I'm also going to the gym at 5 or 6 a.m. So it's hard to put in another hour or 2 hours of just answering DMs. So to your sly little comment, it's challenging. And so it's a double-edged sword, because I don't want to give people wrong advice, but I'm also giving some people no advice. So if I don't answer your DMs, I definitely apologize. It's been really challenging trying to find a balance of answering all the DMs and comment. And I'm a one-man band. I have Hillary helps me with some like designs of like, new Bennett hoodies and merch. And I have like a whole bunch over here that is coming out in like the next couple weeks. So like I have some people doing that stuff, but I don't have a lot of support. So
Yeah.
yeah, rambling.
Yeah, and I mean, you like it that way. You've always said you want to be like the person that either makes it or fails. Like you want to be in charge no matter which way it goes.
It's interesting, and you have a good point, because and not to sound like jaded or angry, but I've had a lot of experiences with a lot of people who say they're really amazing at filming, or they're really amazing at editing, and they hype up this what they do, and then come to find out like they're not at what they're not at the level that they say they are. And now I'm paying premium price for a product that's not that good. And I've
Yeah.
had a lot of situations where I've had a lot of weird encounters with some people that are just like, oh, this is the best shot ever. And it's like, you missed it. My head's cut off, my body's cut off, and you got my left glove. But you think that's art. I don't need art. I'm not in it for art. I'm in it for getting the run in, the takeoff, the trick, the landing, and the out. Like, I need the story. That's my story, not the art of the glove. No one cares. So I've had a lot of challenges with that. So when it comes down to it, well, I'm just gonna do it myself to a point. To a point. One of my friends like helps film and stuff, and he like donates a lot of time to helping out. But it's an interesting spot. It's hard. It's also hard to give up control
Hmm.
because a lot of people again just build up this hype that they're amazing, and I just have maybe don't agree with that.
Yeah. Well, and especially when you're in a niche thing too, and you have like a whole brand that's based on like yourself, basically, it's hard to be like, oh, this other person can do it and still resonate like you. Like that's just not common to find.
And I want to get there. I want to be in a financial position where I can hire somebody and get a return on investment. That's the
Yeah.
goal. I don't want to just be struggling to put out content and just be burnt out. And I'm not, but I don't want to get to that point. And I want a team. But at this certain time that I'm at is I'm investing any money that I'm making is either going back into equipment, going back into the channel, or going back into product to have high quality products. So I do pay a premium and trying to make money doing that so I can help feed the beast and invest and invest. And then the goal is to be able to have a team of people to help out and be able to facilitate that. But we're just not there yet. And going into this season, I'm sticking true to putting out quality content, quality product, and hoping I win in the end. So if I can stay true to that, I think that's what's going to lead me to the road of success. But I don't want to do this on my own. It's a struggle. It's a lot of work.
A lot. Yeah. No, I agree. I'd love to be able to hire people eventually. I don't really make money doing any of this yet, but
Yeah.
the goal one day would be great to be able to delegate stuff and still put out. I think it'd be easier to put out better quality once you're not doing it all the time almost. As long as you have good people doing the things that they're good at, I think it's almost easier to put out better quality because yeah, not everyone's burnt out trying to do everything and wear all the hats.
Yeah, instead of putting 8 hours to 10 hours to 12 hours of editing, I could put that into product development or writing better scripts or doing more research on how to communicate this point effectively or travel or whatever. And that would be the goal, is to be able to a have the support system so I can really elevate what I'm at. And I think I've
Mhm.
done a decent job, and I am definitely super critical of what I've done and what I'm capable of doing. And I think there's been a lot of good things I've done, but I don't definitely do not feel in the creative avenue or the production side of things, I'm not where I want to be just yet, which I'm also excited about. I'm a big nerd. You guys can't see it. I got like cameras and camera lenses, and there's cameras everywhere. And I'm a very nerd when it comes to like digital or like technology. I love computers. I love cameras. I love all that stuff. And being able to utilize that stuff would be fun. And finding somebody who I can mesh with is a big deal for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely. Camaraderie. Yeah. Well, I guess if you want to talk about your foundation a little bit,
Yes.
yeah,
So
let's get into
I'm
it.
really excited about this. And I was talking to Hillary, who I said was helping me out with Bennett. So Hillary is the graphic designer. She does like this stuff. And we were talking about it. It's like, how can we impact snowboarding? That's an emotional connection to me and my struggles or my challenges that I faced. There's a couple things that we could do. Yes, we could donate to POW and we could do some of that stuff. And a lot of people do it. Well, what I want to do is create a foundation, and part of the proceeds of the channel and Bennett Tech and the goggles and the hoodies that I have, part of the proceeds is going to go to a foundation that helps people who've sustained a gnarly injury skiing or snowboarding. And a lot of times you get in this situation where you don't have insurance and you're sending it and you get hurt, then what? Now you're at the hospital, you're setting up a GoFundMe, and you're just trying to crowd raise some money to pay some bills. Well, I want to be able to assist in those situations because I've been there. I still have
Yeah.
bills that I'm paying for my hip. I still, when I was younger, I probably spent 8 years trying to pay off bills from my back. And so it's been an absolute challenge when you're drowning in medical bills from skiing and snowboarding. So that's the principle of creating this foundation, is to help those people in need financially who sustained an injury and just need that extra help. And the more our company becomes big and successful, the more we're going to be able to have an impact to those who like need it in those times of need, because I've been in that position. So that's really what I want to do with Bennett and the channel, is help out people in an impactful way, especially when they're down in that situation.
Yeah, no, that's super, super sick. I definitely thought you were going to talk about something. I don't know if you've heard of it. I don't know the name of it, but I know Burton has like a foundation, but it's a different thing. They help like just get like more kids into snowboarding and like give them gear and like stuff like that. And so things like that already exist, which is amazing, and I love that. But yeah, there's nothing that's ever that I know of that exists kind of like what you're talking about, helping people that are injured from skiing and snowboarding. And I think that's so like not only super sick, but also just really cool that there's people like you that are thinking of others that have like suffered in a situation that you like struggle in and are still struggling in, because it's such a common thing regardless of skiing and snowboarding. Like so many people are in medical debt. So many people complain about like medical insurance because it's crazy expensive, and just like the US medical system in general. And so if you do get hurt doing something you love, now all of a sudden that thing that you love is already expensive. Now you're trying to pay off these bills that are super expensive, and you're just drowning. You're like, well, maybe I'll never be able to do this thing that I loved again because I just can't even afford it anymore. I'm just drowning in debt. And that sucks, that could possibly be someone's situation where they feel like I got hurt doing something I love and I might not even be able to afford to ever do it again.
Yeah. And to go back a step, the Burton Chill Foundation is an incredible foundation that gets people out there. There's, in our local area, it's Snowboard Outreach Society, also known as SOS. They do all these amazing things about getting people into the sport.
Yep.
And that I'm like super stoked and have been involved in SOS in the past, and it's super cool. But again, it's like, how do I create something that's impactful and meaningful to me? Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to try to get people into snowboarding. I have this idea on how to get 1,000 brand new people into snowboarding. I have this whole idea that I don't want to discuss yet and dealing with some logistics, but I have this idea of getting 1,000 people to start snowboarding. Like, I want to be involved in that and definitely help there. But just stuff that's impacted my life. I would not be sitting in this chair talking to you or have any of this following if I didn't break my back. And that happened
Yep.
when I was 17 years old. That completely derailed the path of becoming a professional athlete, going to the Olympics, and supporting my family through snowboarding. That never happened. And not that I regret it by any means, but I wish I had more credibility or more success on that professional level. Yeah, I got some like flow
Mhm.
product and was sponsored by a couple companies, but I was never a professional athlete. But whatever happened, we are here now because of the past and how everything happened. So it's just pretty incredible. And I just don't want people to go through what I go through. Can I make content that hopefully helps prevent you from breaking your back? That's a big bullet point in my mind when I create content. I do not want my following or other snowboarders to go through what I went through. I broke my
Mhm.
back, gnarly concussion, busted hip, busted wrist. My wrist don't like, this one flexes, this one doesn't flex like the same length. It's like this one,
Yeah.
I have like a busted bone. I need surgery. I can't do it. I can't afford to have surgery on a wrist. I'll get there eventually. But I just don't want people to go through what I've gone through, whether it's my
Yeah.
athletes, whether it's falling. I've struggled so much in my life. And again, I don't really talk about it, but I've struggled so much with injuries. I've struggled with fear. I've struggled with just being able to afford to go snowboard and pay for gas when I had $6 in my bank account and I'm choosing to either get food or not while you're at the resort. Like, do I go snowboard and spend this money on gas, or do I get food? Like, what do you do? I've had $6 in my bank account, and it's like, and I just hopefully take that as motivation and experiences for other people. But I just don't want people to go through what I've been through.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And it sucks that like you're not the only one that's experienced that, you know? Like there's so many people out there in similar situations and that's honestly what sucks. And I feel like it's only getting worse. Not going to get into that, but it is just crazy how many people are struggling nowadays and it just sucks that like you said both with getting like into snowboarding, like so many people see the sport of snowboarding, and while it is growing an insane amount, so many people look at skiing and snowboarding and they'd be like, "That's never something I would ever even like think about doing because like I can't." Like whatever it may be, whether it's financial or just like they think it's a status thing or they just don't live near it, whatever it is, they're just like, "That's completely out of my reach." And it sucks that there's people that feel that way about so many different things and it shouldn't be like options for people should always be there no matter what it is, whether it's sport, injury, surgery, whatever. Like you should always have the option and have the ability to try something new if that's what you want to do or get the surgery that you need so you're not in pain. Like that just sucks that anyone is ever in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. It sucks. And those people who are in it and love it, and you said this earlier, may not be able to do it anymore because they're drowning in medical bills. And now I'm not saying that our foundation is going to just pay for everyone's medical bill, but our goal is to be able to have an impact on people's lives that need it, especially in that moment where you're sitting in the hospital completely beat up and just thinking that snowboarding's over. I've been in that so many times in my life where I think I might miss this entire season because I'm hurt. I might not be able to ever snowboard again. I'm thankful to be walking right now. Those things obviously go through our head. After busting my hip, I like sat in my car and just like lost it, just like so upset that my season's over. And luckily it wasn't because I'm stubborn and got to snowboard, but I could barely even walk at that point. So like obviously how am I gonna go snowboard tomorrow? And just devastating. Like it can be so devastating. And that's where people are gonna go through it. So that's the goal with the foundation is to support those in this that are already there. That are in
Yeah,
the
no,
industry.
that's super cool, and I hope it makes a huge impact. I hope you're able to, like, put those funds in it, which is so it's so cool that you even want it's so cool that people even want to start foundations or nonprofits in the first place. Like, it's awesome that those things exist for other people, you know?
You just some people just want to help, and I don't know if it was because I was a kid and I just deflected or a teenager and I just deflected because I'm not a big like attention is fine, but too much attention makes me extremely uncomfortable and I'm not a fan of it. And I just am not. It's funny to say as much as like Instagram and stuff, like I struggle with a lot of attention and new people. So it's a lot easier for me to deflect that attention back onto somebody else and let me help you. Let me help you. Don't ask questions about me. Let me help you. And so I've always been that as a young adult, as long as I can remember. And so just wanting to help people is just so fun to give back. But maybe it's also part of my like, I don't know, insecurities. I don't know. I'm like, don't look at me. I'm shy. I'm introvert. Don't talk to me. I'm nervous.
That's fair, that's fair. I can agree 100%. I guess you kind of mentioned earlier, like, you don't, share a lot of stuff about you, like, you don't like to get into, like, your personality, a lot of your content is just a lot more value-based, and this year you're trying to, like, make that switch a little bit. So I
Mhm.
guess as, like, a precursor into that switch, what is one thing that people don't know about you that they would probably be surprised if they found out?
Oh man. Oh, that on the spot too. I'm bald. Is that one thing that people don't know about? The
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when I first started watching you, you always had your helmet on, so the first
Mhm.
time I saw you without helmet on, I was like, "Holy shit, he's bald."
I started going bald when I was like 17 and really resisted the fact for a very, very long time. And eventually I started just shaving my head bald and just accepting it. And it's been extremely freeing because I can control the narrative now versus being hiding, have to feel like I'm hiding it or that I'm insignificant or like these like self like struggles. Controlling the narrative has been like a big like relief, and it's only been in the last recent couple years. Like I haven't always been like this open and confident about it, which is pretty cool. But
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I think that you see someone who's like not older and they're bald, and I always just think like it's a choice. Like there's nothing wrong with it, but it is crazy, not crazy, but it is like something you have to think about is like maybe it wasn't a choice. Like maybe like obviously the choice to shave your head, but you're like maybe because they were balding and maybe that is an insecurity and you don't necessarily think about that sometimes, which is I think just natural for everyone to kind of see someone and like make assumptions or not think about something, not being cognizant of something that they might be struggling with. And I think it's super important that people almost kind of I mean, it's super cliche, but like the think before you speak type of things, or like think before you make any sort of comment, because you never know like how that person might perceive it, or like what has gone into something that might seem super minor to you.
yeah, and I've avoided getting certain jobs because I may actually have to take off my hat. Like that's how like insecure I was about it for a long time. Oh, I go get a job in the food industry. No, because I'm gonna have to like, and then eventually I just got to a point where I was like, I'm freaking over it. We're sending it. We're out here. But yeah, it's funny how behind the scenes there's so much struggles that people never know about. And even to this day, we didn't really finish talking about it. And without going too far into a tangent, like my hip is still a struggle. It is painful to snowboard. But you see these clips on Instagram and me doing a 720 and cartwheels and all this stuff. And you're like, oh, dude, this guy's killing it. He's fine. It's like, yeah, I snowboarded for one run, filmed something. Now I'm going to go home and cry because my hip hurts. But that's not what
Yeah.
the struggle is. So being more vulnerable going into this season's content of just some of the stories and some of the backgrounds and just being transparent, both in like all my terrible jokes and the vibes and friends and being open-minded and sharing the story and being accepting of people understanding my story so that I can help people, hopefully help people in a different way. But that
Yeah.
takes me like letting loose a little bit or letting go to be able to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, which it's definitely hard because I mean I watched your content obviously for a while before I ever went to your summer camp, and just like meeting you at summer camp, it like not that I thought that your personality was exactly like what your content is, but like when I first like saw your personality for the first time, I was like, oh, this dude's funny. Like he's cool. He's like chill snowboarder vibes. Like not in like a like way to like hype you up, but it's just like that's obviously not what your content like really shows. So I think it'll be really cool for people to kind of see that side of you and probably be like I know when people meet you in person, like that's what they think. So it's cool that that will actually be shown too.
That's the goal. And again, I'm just trying to evolve my content and just be better. If I can be 1% better every year or every time I put out content, that's all I'm asking for, just to progress and to move forward and do things better. And being vulnerable, I believe, is going to be the next step. And even like to go back a little bit with my original content was this guy snowboarding, breaking it down. Obviously, that was me, but no one know who this dude was, just breaking it down. It was all text form. Did that for 2 years, grew 100,000 followers. Going into the next season, or it was probably like 4 seasons. And then going in the next season, I started putting my face on camera and explaining stuff. And I doubled my following just by being a human, by being more like in front of things. And that's something that, it's just an evolution, a step in the right direction is definitely what I'm going for.
And it's hard. It's hard to try and be yourself on camera because it almost feels forced, or at least for me, it feels forced when I'm like trying to be like, oh, I need to be funny, or this is how I actually act. Like, I don't know. It feels weird if there's a camera in your face to like be like that, unless I feel like you're around other people, like your friends, and you're trying to just like going back and forth. I think that that comes off a little bit more natural, which is where that vlog style might be easier. But yeah, it's hard to do that.
Absolutely. And the grind and the hustle behind that. But yeah, just being authentic on camera, because I'm definitely not trying to be unauthentic and just put on a show. No, it's having that real world interactions. I'm looking forward to that this year. And I've had a lot of my friends tell me, like, yeah, just be you. And I'm like, yeah, but I'd rather just put the intention on you and teach you how to snowboard and make you better. But then getting in those experiences like a summer camp where we get to hang out and vibe and there's no cameras, it's just like it's a very organic experience is what I'm trying to capture. And I have a lot of bad jokes, and I don't know if I'm funny, but some people think so. And being able to get that across is easier said than done.
Definitely. I hear that all the time. People are like, just be you. Like when I was like really struggling and starting out, people were like, this is so stiff. Like just be yourself. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Like I don't know how to put a camera in my face and be myself.
Hi, welcome to today's video. Stop! No one's gonna watch this. No
100%.
one likes us. Stop being weird.
Yep. Speaking of being weird, angry snowboarders said you ate a live bird on a chairlift.
It's absolutely not true. Angry. Okay, so angry snowboarder is funny, and I snowboarded with him like almost like 2 times a week. I see him a lot at Copper, and I think he's a very incredible and funny dude for sure. And he's trying to start this rumor about me eating birds. To me, it makes absolutely no sense. I don't understand what's going on, but here we are. So, but yeah, he's funny for sure. And that's like another person who's in the industry doing product reviews and stuff. And I'm so thankful for people like that because I don't want to do that work. That's just not something I have any interest in. He's like, oh, every day he's on a new snowboard, if not two. And I'm like, why? That's not fun. And he's like, oh, blah, blah. Like he enjoys it. So big shout out to him. And then I'll jump on his live stream. We were talking about doing some collabs this year and then probably making a couple videos or doing some stuff, which I think it should be super cool and super interesting to do for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I know. I worked at like a ski shop once and like tried to get into learning more about gear. And I mean, like my knowledge is there, but it's pretty mid-level. Like I'm not gonna get super in depth on like super nerdy stuff, which I think it's super sick and I'd love to learn more about it. But yeah, when people ask me about gear, I'm like, I don't know. I have a million different snowboards. Sometimes I ride them. Most of the time I stick to one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the ideas and the concepts and the technology behind the boards, but I don't necessarily like talking about the specific boards or that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of kick it off, what is one memorable moment of your career or the most memorable moment, whether it's content creation or just snowboarding in general?
Hmm. Most memorable. I would say that one of my biggest memories right now is going to Japan. What
Mhm.
I loved was the culture, the experience, the vibes with my friends. So I went with just one friend to Japan. His name's Sean. He's amazing. And he had this brilliant idea. And I somewhat say it sarcastically and somewhat not. We go to Japan. We're going to be there for 2 weeks. And we booked 3 days of accommodation. So we get there. And the thought was, what if this place was not sick and we're trapped here for 2 weeks because we have accommodation? So we went there thinking that we're just gonna figure it out and hope we figure it out. And that was like a really cool experience because I'm very easygoing when it comes to traveling. Like I have no expectations. I don't really care. It's like whatever. And I'm very mellow, at least I feel. And so is my buddy. And so we're just like, oh, we'll figure it out and rode this place that was not as sick as everyone says it is. And my perception of it was kind of bored there. So we completely ditched that plan and flew across the country and rode a plane and did something completely different, something new. And just having the ability to go to a new country, have no idea what's going on, yet have one of the most amazing times. And I would say that for me, the most amazing time was not the snowboarding, it was the culture, the experience, and hanging out with my friend. That was like incredible. And that makes me want to travel more and like and
Mhm.
experience other things. But it's gotta be with the right people.
Yeah, definitely. The Japan is like on my bucket list. Like once I have money, that will be top tier, like 100% what I want to do. It just seems so cool, and I think it's so different culture. Like obviously, I've never been there. I've never experienced the culture, but just from like what we kind of know as a gist of different cultures, it just seems so different to what we experience in the US. And I think that's just so sick to be able to experience something like very different and very different mountains that's just so memorable. People talk about Japan all the time. People constantly travel to Japan for snowboarding, and it's like that's not for no reason, right? There's obviously something really special about it. And so, yeah, I'd love to experience that. And I think it's so sick that you got to do that last year.
Yeah, I'm so pumped. It's been on the bucket list for a long time. It's definitely a snowboarder's destination, and
Yeah.
It was really cool. And even recently, I was texting my buddy Sean. I was like, man, I want to go back to Japan. I want to have that experience. I want to go do it again. I want to have those experiences. And at the end of the day, you don't know how long you're going to be around, and you got to do those things. Do you ever see the movie Up?
Mhm.
One of the worst movies in the world. That beginning is so heart-wrenching. It's a great movie, but the beginning makes you want to cry because all of a sudden they want to go to this place, but they never made it happen. And then life's done. Like just like that. And that to me, like hit me pretty hard. So what can we do today that's not promised tomorrow? And that's something that I try to live in the moment as much as possible, is what is going on right now, whatever it is, appreciate it. And when in
Mhm.
Japan, when there's some things that were not so awesome, I never want to wish to be home. If it sucks, it's sick, just enjoy what it is, because it's not going to
Mhm.
be around forever. And that was something that I learned a lot through traveling, is just enjoy them.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the whole reason I even started any of this in the first place, is I was just fundamentally disagree with the fact that as humans, we are supposed to be on this set plan, and then you work your whole life away, and then you retire when you're old and you can't do anything, and then that's when you get to live your life. I was like, absolutely not. Like, now is the time I want to live my life. I want to live my life my whole life.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we do that? And I was like, I'm going to make that happen one way or another. So, for anyone listening, whether it's starting your own business or not, find a way to live your life now.
Gotta do it while you still have a capable body. That's what I think about. When my body's falling
Definitely.
apart, gotta go do it now. I don't know how many years I.
No, you gotta make your body capable. We're gonna get that out of your head. You are not that old.
I'm not that old. I just, like, how long could I be doing 1000s? Am I gonna do them at like 6 years old? Probably not. Unless you're Chad Otterstrom. That guy's a freaking god. He's insane. And he's not 60, by the way. He's just amazing. But yeah, I definitely, and that's where putting in the work in the gym and trying to fix my hip and get everything sorted now is definitely part of that longevity. But I'm not counting on the fact that that's going to be there, because my mindset is it's not promised. Enjoy what I have today with what I have. Am I setting myself up for the long run? Absolutely. In the way I ride, the way I think, the way I process, the way I focus on how I snowboard or whatnot, it definitely contributes to that, but enjoy it while you have it.
Yeah, definitely. Nothing's promised. There's no true way to prevent every single injury. Like, it's not gonna happen. So you just gotta enjoy it and live it while you got it.
Yeah, exactly. My
Well,
hip, I didn't even fall.
this is true. Wasn't it like a genetic predisposition or something?
Yeah, you don't know about it until it's happened and you're like, oh, rip.
Yep. Yep. I know. It's unfortunate. And there's diseases that people get. You just gotta have fun and enjoy every moment, because, yeah, you never know what's gonna happen. And even if something bad does happen, I think just look on the bright side. Like, find the little things that you do enjoy and make sure that you do them.
100%. Goals, right?
Yeah. Just like owning copper.
Yeah, goals.
But yeah, that's kind of all we have for this one. But I do want, for anyone listening, if you want a part three, or you have other stuff that you want us to talk about and you have any questions, definitely drop them in the description and maybe we'll do a part three. Who
Heck,
knows?
heck yeah. And if anybody's interested in picking up any gear, you want to feel awesome this winter, check out Bennett. And if you are interested in supporting the foundation at all, we'll have a link down below as well. I'm definitely going to shamelessly plug those. So if anybody's interested, supporting the industry, definitely let us know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for coming on again. And yeah, let's do it some other time. Definitely come out to Snowball.
Yes, that could be so sick. And then we could do a podcast in person. Be even
Uh,
more awkward. Be sick.
for sure, for sure.
Sick.
All right.
Appreciate you
See ya.
guys.
Woo! This light is